Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Scrying Orb. Today, we're just going to be delving into some personal D&D stories. Before we get into the tales, let me delve into our inspirational quote. "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man," by Heraclitus. And it's true. What we do in the game is a good representation of how life impacts us. We can take our D&D characters and they go through a traumatic event, and that shapes them. That ends up forming how they view the world. So aside from our Curse of Strahd game, I've got my pirate campaign. This came about by every player ended up making a character at home, and of the 4 players, 3 of them were very pirate-themed characters. The last one just being your average gnome bard. At this point of the story, they had already gone and done the Sunless Citadel adventure. They had continued on through the Yawning Portal. Not the Yawning Portal. I picked up Tales from the Yawning Portal, and that was the adventure module we were playing through. And after they had done the first 2 adventures, they kind of wanted to go off and do their own thing for a while. And I ended up making a little town, and the ship they were on that was going from one location up the river to eventually the Sword Coast had a tax that needed to be paid in order for ships to go past it, and there was a little bit of shady dealings between the person who owned the bridge and the person who owned the ship. And basically, if the ship stopped at the bridge, the captain was going to lose ownership of his vessel. The players ended up breaking the bridge, and that allowed the ship to pass through. However, the players got tied up in that area for a little while. So I kept adding different things to the adventure, and one of the things that they ended up doing was running into the woods, and they ended up being attacked by werewolves. One of the players, the gnome, ended up being cursed with lycanthropy. By this point of the campaign, one of the characters, the Dragonborn monk, had become very attached to Fur. Fur being the gnome bard. I should go ahead and preface and just tell the whole cast and go from there. So we have Fur, the gnome bard. She had recently been bitten by the werewolf and was suffering lycanthropy. She's kind of your quiet, is a little too naive and trusting, which ended up getting her in the situation that she is in with the rest of the party, who are all pirates. The next character is Julong, the Dragonborn monk. He is this swarthy looking pirate. He has like a bear skull on his head because he thought it was cool. Is just your rugged, very off-putting individual who drinks messily. He intentionally sloshes it all down his face because Julong dresses and acts like a pirate, but in reality, he hates pirates. He intentionally finds pirates and hunts them out and kills them. That was part of his monastery, and he was raised on a ship, so he's constantly keeping his eye out on the other 2 individuals in the group, the half-orc barbarian Viking. Vikings are basically pirates, so it gets a pass. Man, Gunter is this hulking behemoth. He's got this awesome staff that he found that glows with green fire and is just a very interactive individual where he intentionally sees things that he should not touch and goes, I'm gonna touch it. And then we have the tiefling fighter Mordai, who is your suave swashbuckler who has absolutely no luck. All the time, the player will be like, I'm gonna do this, and roll her dice, and she ends up getting nat ones constantly. In fact, we ended up telling her, you're not allowed to play with your old dice anymore. Here are a new set of dice. You are taking these. And that was the makeup of the group. So after getting lycanthropy, Julong was very motivated to figure out a way to fix Fur. He felt as if he needed to protect her because she's with the rest of these pirates, and they had formed quite a good bond between the two of them. Julong also had a bit of guilt because before he left his monastery, one of his background characters ended up dying, and he felt as if it was his fault. So, they ended up seeking out a witch, and she was able to give them the solution to the remedy that was needed to fix her lycanthropy. However, she needed some ingredients, and those ingredients ended up being a couple that she ended up having. However, she also needed a type of ingredient that could only be found in caves. And so into the dungeons the characters went. I ended up finding an awesome homebrew one-shot that ended up having these really cool crystals, and it kind of motivated the players to explore more of the dungeon. I'll actually post it down in the description below, because it is something I would recommend checking out. As the players were exploring the dungeon, they ended up finding a fork, and even though they shouldn't have, they split up. This ended up with the tiefling and the half-orc going into one tunnel, and the dragonborn and the gnome going into the other. The former two ended up going through this underwater tunnel, and ended up finding a little pocket of air that had an island in it, along with a skeleton. And within the skeleton's belongings was a bag, which was an anti-magic field, which contained a flame skull. They had a really cool fight that ended with the tiefling leaping up and throwing the bag back over the flame skull's head, which ended up dispelling the magic of the flame skull. And so that was really cool. It was a really nice fight. It could have went wrong. However, they were able to accomplish it. No big deal. The other two ended up in a cavern. There was something off about this cave. It seemed to be radiating with magical energy. There were these Aurum crystals, which is related to the actual adventure. Essentially, they are these large crystals that contain magical energy inside them that can only be found whenever portals from the elemental plane of Earth open in the Forgotten Realms. And as they were collecting some of these crystals, they ended up in a large chamber that had a very large hunk of Aurum crystals in the center of the room. And as they were exploring the room, it turned out the obelisk in the room ended up being a crystalline golem made of the Aurum crystals. They got into a large fight with it. This was built for a 4-person encounter. They were fighting their hardest, but the giant ended up dealing a massive blow to the bard, after she had already taken some damage to begin with. Julong was devastated. He ended up using the rest of his ki to pick up the gnome and dash out of the room. I had an NPC that I wanted to save for later, and ended up pulling him out to kind of shoo away the giant. And Fur died. She ended up failing her death saving throws, and it impacted Julong. He was devastated. He wanted to find a way to bring her back. And Julong was reflecting on the pain that he had felt when he had lost his other friend. And in a way, he knew he did not like feeling this emotion. And it made him come to the conclusion that he shouldn't allow people to come close to him, because whenever he allows people to be close to him, he ends up impacted and hurt. The player ended up making another character that came into the game for a while, and that character eventually became an NPC after Fur was brought back to life. That wound of characters experiencing their friends dying and feeling responsible for them is still there for Julong. And during that time, he did strengthen his bond with the two other pirates in the group. However, he didn't allow the new character, Kantos, to get close with him. He wasn't mean, he just didn't open up like he did with Fur or with the other two adventurers. With that all being said, it's fun to take the experiences that the characters are going through and reflecting on them and going, how would my character react if their friend died? And being how it is right now, the player has already decided that if Fur dies again, Julong is going to be enraged. He is going to be angry at the gods, at himself, at everybody. And there came a point recently, the party almost experienced a TPK. Julong was seriously considering grabbing Fur and leaving the battle, even though it meant endangering Mordai. It's just interesting to think about how the emotions that the characters feel should be real emotions, and to have that influence and impact the decisions you make as a player, even if it doesn't benefit your group. Now, am I saying to be an asshole? No, they ended up overcoming, they ended up going back and rescuing Mordai, but it adds a level of dynamic for roleplay. And even after the recent encounter where Mordai was downed, there was a little abrasiveness between the party of just Julong being like, well, I did come back for you. And Mordai being like, but at the same time, you left me surrounded by skeletons. It's interesting. I'm just rambling now. What are ways that you have influenced your character by taking experiences that they have had and reintroducing it back later on in the game for good flavor? I want to hear about those down in the comments if you wouldn't mind. Like I said, this is going to be a shorter episode, so I don't have a ton of time today to cover everything I want to. The other night, I sat down to record an episode with Bearbard. And it was funny because before we hit the record button, we were like, yeah, we should catch up for a little bit first. Just, shoot the shit, see what's up. And we ended up talking for 2 hours without even recording, so we ended up rescheduling, but it was really good catching up with him. I really enjoyed just hanging out, talking with him. Hopefully, very soon, you'll be able to hear from him. I also have an episode lined up for Baron D. Ropp and William SRD. So it will be a lot of fun to talk with them and get to pick their brain about different aspects of D&D and maybe even a little bit of their personal lives. I don't want this podcast to be strictly about role-playing games. I want to open up and talk about other things, talk even with other creators. Doing kind of whatever. I really have enjoyed coming back and working on these videos. I know I'm not really putting a ton of effort into making these videos, but I enjoy doing it. Excuse me while I mushmouth my way through the recording. I gotta drink more water. To tell the truth though, I sat down to record an episode of this 3 days ago, and I didn't do it. And then I sat down the next night to record with Bearbard, and then I was like, last night, I'm gonna record an episode, and I didn't do it. and I'm finally sitting down to record. Another thing, I've been putting too much effort into editing these podcast episodes, so you may begin to notice more mistakes in the episode as I'm rambling about different aspects of whatever the fuck I'm talking about. William SRD was like, dude, put in 70% effort and just make more content. And so we're giving that a try today. Let's see. That's enough me rambling about YouTube crap. Last episode I was late because I should have screen recorded for the Sonichu episode, and I didn't. I had to spend a lot of time screenshotting and downloading all the Sonichu comic issues and putting them into place. I'm rambling way too much in this episode about random nonsense that nobody actually cares about. Oh boy. Soon, though, I want to be able to do an episode in the woods. I want to go hiking. I want to sit around, record a few videos, and talk about how your D&D character would have a lot of experience traveling from one town to the other, hiking in the woods, and just point out, in the words of Alex Jones, that we're meant to be in nature. They're putting chemicals in the water to turn the frickin' frogs gay. Oh, man, I'm just a little fried. It's been a long weekend, but that all depends on my schedule, though. I've been very busy. It seems that every time I believe I have a free weekend, Mel ends up being like, no, you've got something going on Saturday. And I'm like, ah. But that's life. We're entering that stage where after December, everything's going to come to a screeching halt. And we're going to have like 3-4 months of very not busy time. During that time, if I haven't decided to stick with doing D&D, I'll be coming up with what I'll actually be pursuing with content. I'm just rambling again. I think for right now, we're just going to end it. We're going to make it a short episode. I didn't really have a whole lot to talk about. I have another story I want to tell, but it's going to be at least a 20 or 30 minute story, and I don't have the time right this moment. If you have ideas of things that I should look at for Scrying Orb, or other content ideas that you think I might enjoy pursuing, I'd like to hear about them. Anyway, that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you all for listening, and hope you all have a great week. And until next time, hope you feel inspired.